Yes, you have first you make your sculpture and your piece. When your piece is done, you like this one. This one is rough. So when it's go out from the kiln, the first it's drying. Then you put in the kiln to fire. You have what we call a bisque firing.
Okay.
And it becomes like this rough. And then on top of it, you put some glazing to have the color.
Okay, good. Welcome back to the Roman Anton podcast. Today we have Christine Blom, Thailand, Bangkok resident, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Just arrived 2 months ago.
Nice.
And so from Hong Kong. I was in Hong Kong before.
Okay, and you are originally from France?
Yes, I'm French, but been far away from France for 20 years now.
Okay.
So sometimes I think I'm more European and maybe global girl than anything else.
I think that's so. I'm gonna disclose here. We met very recently, as last week, and I've spent the week listening to your stuff in various forms or reading your stuff, and I was really captured just by some of the underlying premises of it, and from our first conversation as well. And I had to. So for those of you, we'll get internet stuff and links to your material so people can go find it. And the good news is it's in French, and maybe the bad news is it's in French. But for me, it was a real visit. I mean, I don't know where to start today, but I wanted to start with this. And there was one session. I didn't go in a particular order. And so I'm thinking it might, if the logic applied, it was Caroline. It was your last podcast, which was podcast 20.
Yep.
And the French was so beautiful to listen to between you two. And I got stuck just sort of listening to word choice and sort of how lyrical it was for me. And I missed the point, and I missed the structure of part of it, is you have an idea, and you repeat this through your podcast, and you say that the first question is, and I wrote down one in English, so it's not even close to a good translation. When did you first become a nomad?
Yeah.
That was on one, right.
Yeah, that's the point, yes.
Right, and then the second one.
What is in which situation?
Right.
And the way you prepare for that.
Right.
Because when you go with your parents as a kid, you have no idea.
Right.
But when you go as a student, you know exactly why you're doing it. You go and you want to go to United States, you want to go to Canada, you want to go and discover the world,
right.
And another way to study. And when you go as an expat with your family or your husband or wife, it's another way also. And sometimes you just pack your bag and you decide to go around.
Yeah.
And so the idea at first is very different, and you see there's kind of a pattern that's coming across actually little by little, that I discovered that or the ones who had the idea of starting a job and have option to go away,
right.
Most of the time the parents were traveling alone and leaving the kids at home. And coming back with fantastic pictures, and say, everybody was like, why not me? Right. Going to visit Argentina and see the Machu Picchu, and there's a pattern actually, which is very interesting. Not talking about the third culture kid,
right.
who are starting to their life.
Uh-huh.
And already connected with other country, other cultures, as my kids. We lived France, one was 4 and the other one was 7. And crossing so much identities, so much culture. They can't stay at the same place, and they can't imagine staying in Paris, for example, or their lives. And yeah, so yeah, the pattern is there, whatever. It's very interesting.
Well, it is. So we jumped over maybe a better explanation for the listeners, you have a podcast that you do that I found through your website and then on Spotify. And there's different ways to get to it. And depending on how we find your material, there's other bonuses I'm learning, so photos and things. But the podcast, I guess, would be called Vie de Nomade.
Yes.
Which is the life of a nomad, maybe
Exactly.
somewhat literally translated, or the nomad life, or however you say it in French.
Yeah.
So if that's the premise, life of the nomad, you have different guests, and the introduction is, professional or personal travel, and then you ask the big question, how did you start? And so I thought, boy, how many times have I had that discussion? Because I'm a nomad, like you, I guess, right? I've been on the road for 15 years, and then before that I was on the road as well. And so it's an interesting discussion we always have, but the way you do it on the podcast is very evocative. And I've said that with other guests about listening to audio, but it was the French language that was a real treat for me as well. So I supposedly have a French major and can understand it. There was a lot I was struggling with, but I just remembered the sort of lyrical nature, and there were some word choices, and I want to see if you're aware of this. I just want to see or if this is just part of the dialogue that and the level at which you do it. You had this was a great Matthew Mott, which is early one, right?
Yes, it's a good friend of mine in Hong Kong. Yes,
right.
He's a poet, musician.
Right, and so he said, and he's speaking in French, obviously, right? So he says. Sauvé par la poésie. I was saved by poetry. And I thought, okay, come on now. But it was completely serious, and it was an excellent expression. And I thought, that sounds so serious and significant. But he meant it 100% when he said it. There was this other one. He said, un chaleur improbable, improbable, right? And I thought, wow, that's like Baudelaire or something. I thought, like, who says that? And you guys were talking so naturally, I thought, wow, this is just a high level of discourse I'm trying to decipher and get through as a French as a second or third or fourth language, whatever it was. But it was so enjoyable, and the sound quality of it was so well done. And so I really got stuck with just admiration of the podcast, which was the first time. I mean, Joe Rogan is someone I listen to. You listen to it. You're not sort of stopping to ponder word choices and audio quality. But with yours, I was. And it was very enjoyable. So I wanted to get that out of the way. I'm not, this isn't a fanzine or something like that, but it was just an interesting thing. And so I wonder if people say that to you, if the feedback you're getting is, it's pleasant to listen to it, not just hear the stories, but it's the way you do it is a pleasant listen.
Yes, the majority of people, they enjoy because it's a conversation. I have no point on going on with very specific pattern, right. And I know the majority of people that I interview are people I know more or less, and I discover a part of their life at the same time as everybody, and which is very interesting also because I know a few things, and I there's a few things also which are very important for me. And I know the story of those person or part of it, and I want this to be very visible in the audio. So, which is the part. That's why I think it helps with the conversation, and it makes it pleasant. And also in my podcast, I try. I'm an artist, and I'm very fond of artists. I'm very impressed. With the artists when they go somewhere else and they have to fight to go to do their job just the same way as before, maybe improving. And the impact of the new culture and the new story, architecture, or whatever, food or whatever, has most of the time an impact on the work they're doing, their art pieces. And this is also something I want to put on light. And I want people to be very comfortable of talking about this. And another thing is that most of my life, I was a dependent visa. And so you arrive somewhere and you have to start from scratch, everything. And the majority of the people I interview are doing that. And for me, it's very important to show that we are all able to reinvent ourselves. We have a lot of competencies. We have a lot of skills. We are not fearless, but we go forward and we go on. And that's really part of it. And I think it helps people to go on the conversation and open their mind and open their hearts and just talk about their lives and the feeling they have, the emotions, and maybe that's why you have this impression of lyrics, kind of.
Yeah, that's a good explanation. I mean, I appreciate that, and it's interesting because I have this bad habit of trying to reach my answer that's already in my head. I'm going to tell you what your favorite color is, right? It has to be blue. It has to be. So, and there's one moment as you were just talking there, I thought of where you said, it's a very blue sky today. I'm paraphrasing one of yours. You're outside, obviously. There's some bird noises in the back. You said you can hear the birds you wouldn't have said birds and bees, but you said something that was nice in French. To me, and then you said it's a blue sky, and you repeated it. You said no, there's some clouds, but it's a very blue sky. And I thought, yeah, and I love listening to good sports announcers when they're able to say, okay, that's a cross-court forehand down the line, and it's 3 feet from the baseline. Just spontaneous live commentary that's very descriptive is not. It's a trained. I don't think anyone starts doing that. Just like, I'm going to say it's 12 inches from the baseline, right? I mean, that's just not. I think you have to sort of say, that would have been a helpful detail. I'll say it next time, and you train for that. So you do some semi-pro matches, and then maybe you get to do college matches, and then you do Wimbledon or something. But you don't start right away, or you're extraordinary if you do. And I guess if you're a pro athlete, maybe they throw you in the big booth, but. I thought I'm really getting a lot out of these descriptions. And so I'm on a podcast. This is your podcast. I was always comparing whose is better, what's she doing better than me, which is another one of my reactions. But I thought I'm getting a lot of imagery out of this, and it's just the audio. It's an audio podcast. And I thought I lose nothing in this for just being audio. And it was a very awakening moment because when you walked in today, you looked at all this gear here and said, you have a couple more things than I've got. And then, okay. So that's a lot about me, and you're the person getting interviewed. But I wanted you to hear it because I think today we're going to talk about sort of your process, or maybe not, but just how you go through this. And you've told me a little bit already, but it's really interesting. I really got you drew me in very quickly in episode 20, and so I didn't race through them, but I went through quite a few of them and had the same experience each time. So I like this. I like the direction it's going. So it's in French. So you mentioned last week, friends, family, yourself, English possibility. Are you going to keep it French?
Yeah, I don't know. I think at first it seems easiest to do it in French. Just also because I was not so comfortable doing this.
Interesting.
I didn't want to do something like very journalistic, something very processing,
right,
whatever.
Right.
I was quite frightened at first, and so I listened to many podcasts, and okay, I hear people coughing and whatever. I said, okay, screw. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Go on. And if there's wind, there's birds. That's why with Mathieu we were on his rooftop. And that was fun. And sometimes you hear the wind, so you editing a little bit of the noise, which is a pain in the neck. It's very difficult to go on with the wind. It's a really bullshit thing. But it doesn't matter at the end. But as there's one episode I've done with a very impressive, super French journalist, fantastic person. Her name is Florence de Changy, and we were in it's a kind of bar
Yeah.
in a yacht club, yacht club.
Members only.
And oh my God, it was awful because people, you're like, what are you doing with all your stuff? And the noise was so crazy and mad. And unfortunately, I edited the best I could to avoid the noise, but it was really awful. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry of all this, because it's at one moment you're just fed up with the noise and you're not focused on what she's saying.
Yeah.
And she's saying things, she's really, really passionate and very interested, and I loved it. So I thought, okay, I have to try to just go on forums and chit chat to find a way to edit it better, to have. So I don't know, but maybe I will do another episode with her with a better condition. So I'm learning also, and it's just my 20th episode I put online. So I'm learning it. There's now a few things I'm avoiding, even if I want to go on the same way as I did in the rooftop or in the middle of nature. I never put this one on for now, but I had two BTT guys coming. We were in the nature, really in the nature with a guy, and two BTT guys came and they blew just just where my microphone was. I was like, what? You're kidding me. And so, things happen, but it doesn't matter. And I think that's part of life and exactly my purpose, actually. I just want to just show people that our nomad life is not just holiday. We're not super rich. We have a life like everybody, and we have to learn new languages. You have to find new friends and go on with the administration just as in our own home country, and all that stuff go on. But we have open-minded, and I think our eyes are bigger and more curious, and that's the point. And we're learning every day, and I think that's our passion, and that's why we go on with this kind of life, because we're still very interested. And maybe the way of doing podcast also is another way to be curious and show people what life is and what we can do and all the possibility we have, and stop complaining. And just open your eyes, open your mind. And there's so many people around, some struggling, but still have a big smile, and go on with life and go on with fantastic project. And this is great, I think.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot in there. I mean, and you're covering things that were moments of awareness from this week quickly. And so I want to raise some of them so you can hear maybe what I was thinking when I heard this on some of them. And so there's some mixed points. But Caroline, this episode 20 again, talked about the third world or the troisième monde, and I think in the context of that discussion, it was, parent A, parent B, her in a new place, and you have a new world, and so
Exactly.
it wasn't third world in a definitional sense, because that has a different definition now. But there was this concept of this new place that is different because you're there, right? And so it's not a vacation. Right, and so there's just this embedded in these discussions is the third world, and one of her comments was, I think, we thought she was saying, I just wanted to make it through another year in Germany, and I ended up spending 9. And I thought, what a funny comment. Is that out of the ordinary? I don't know. Of course, for people to live 9 years overseas or in a different country, she's in the top 1%. Not many people do that, right? That's a rare person, even though there are millions of them. That's still rare. But it was such a funny comment, because I think we've all had that on the road. It's like, how long will I be here?
Exactly.
I'm retiring here. Okay, we'll see. We'll see how long that lasts. And maybe you go next year, or conditions change, or things happen.
Exactly.
But these were very interesting comments she continued to have. But she was so clear in her thinking and so good in her delivery that was very fun to watch her jump from country to country. And then the job, and then her job, and then the husband's job, and then the kid came along. And so some of the standard stories for travel evolution But you know, the vie de nomade, you know, I started to think, right, you know, this is life. These are families, trailing spouse or not, whatever that means. You know, there's a lot going on every time you make one of these moves.
Definitely.
Right?
Definitely.
And so you just came here, so you're right in the beginning of the frustration period where the phone may or may not work, the internet may or may not work, the electricity may or may not be in your name, and you could do that from Chicago to New York and it'd be the same experience, but it's a little more different sometimes when you're trying to do it through a language you don't know yet.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's part of the game.
Yeah.
I think at first you're maybe afraid a little bit. When we started with my husband, because I moved a lot in France with my parents, which is very difficult actually, because from place to place, I think it's like in the United States, if you live in Los Angeles and then you arrive in middle of Idaho or Iowa, I think it's a shock. Yeah. And it was just the same for me. And I had really this feeling of being isolated and just very lonely, because it was very different, changing school, changing friends, just again, it was just the same in France. But then I met my husband, of course, a foreigner, he's Norwegian, because it's part of the game also. And so we moved to England.
The nomad game.
Yeah, nomad game. And we moved to England together. And actually, it looks like very simple, you know, it's just England, close to France, but no big deal. But it's another world. Yeah. And so it was not very long, but we started to see a little bit what was going on with it. And then we moved to Mexico after 7 years back to France. And this is completely different. And there you have to learn the game, really, because of security, because of food, because of administration. And my frustration also because I couldn't work. I had no visa to work.
Right.
So this is also a part of something that the majority of people don't know, is that the rules are not the same everywhere. And sometimes you can be very frustrated and you have to reinvent yourself another way. So I went back to school, learned Spanish, went to do post-production video and audio stuff with the 18 years kids.
Right,
that was 30-something.
Yeah.
But it was fun. It was another way to deal with the things and learn things, and just deal with administration like everywhere. And yeah, but actually we loved it. And it was a fantastic country and so amazing.
That's Mexico now. So how long were you in the UK before you went to Mexico?
We were in UK just for 1 year.
Okay.
Then we went back to France for 7 years. And then we left for Mexico.
For 7 years. So that's a big chunk now. That's 15 years. So that's a segment. And so are you a quick language learner or is it a struggle?
I like to learn languages. And also I think it's a mark of respect. Actually, you arrive somewhere, you're invited. Yeah. You know, it's not your country. So you have to get used to the rules, to the new culture, everything, and learn the language is part of the game. And also in some countries, you have no choice.
Yeah, right.
So
yeah, Shogo and I, he's Japanese. We talk about this in Japan. I mean, in his Miyazaki prefecture, I asked him in the podcast we did, I said, do people on the street speak English? And he said, no, the signs aren't in English either. You got to learn Japanese if you're going over there. So I get what you're saying is there are even some parts of the United States that are a challenge, I imagine, if you're decent in English to sort of hear and understand. So
yes, sure.
But it is a respect thing. Yeah, it is also an interesting point. Work permits and visas are serious now. There's just this book is stuck in my head by Barry Traven. It's called The Death Ship, and it's about this fellow who gets stuck in the hold of a boat and ends up feeding the fire with coal and ends up getting thrown off the boat and doesn't have credentials. And it's maybe the last pure look at not having immigration, just sort of going from country to country as a nomad, and no one really caring if you're crossing a border other than, for warfare purposes. Like, are you on our side or someone else's side? I'm with you guys. Okay, come on. And just that idea of not having a piece of paper and a thing that says you can't do it is so foreign now, right? But there is still modern literature or stuff you can buy off the bookshelf at Kinokuna or at Asia Books, or that will describe these stories of these transient, borderless worlds, even though they were well-defined states, the Treaty of Westphalia or whatever, everything was bordered and stuff, but you could pretty much go back and forth, right? You might want an introduction letter if you're going to meet some political person, but now it's serious business, and showing up uninvited or showing up with some questions is challenged routinely everywhere now, right? There's not...
Yeah, but sometimes there it was official, so I couldn't work. So that was the point. It was like this. My visa was not including work.
Right.
But I arrived after Mexico. We've been to Brussels, which is part of Europe, French speaking.
Right.
And I was like, yes, fun. I could work. So that's going to be okay. And I arrive in Brussels. And if you're in Brussels and you don't speak flamenco, in my job, which is event planner, I couldn't work.
There you go.
So I had to learn Flemish to be able to go to interviews where they told me, oh, but you're French. And you're part of the 50% we're obliged to receive when we want to hire somebody.
I see.
But we just hire Flemish people.
There you go.
Oh, screw you. So it was just the same. No, but it's just the same. And it's nearly worse because you have the option to work. You're supposed to be able to work. But for political reason, you can't. And the guy said, your Flemish is not too bad for 6 months.
Right.
That was not the problem. The problem that I was politically on the wrong side.
And here I was about to praise the EU for having open borders. So, all right. Well, there's restrictions and there's restrictions.
So it's everywhere. You have new things and new challenges everywhere.
And so, is part of these first 15 years married, going back to Norway to husband's spot too? So you're bouncing France.
No way.
Norway
was not an option. Never.
Just no visits. No.
Yeah, we visited, but for me it's too cold and too dark and too whatever.
Okay. So
my husband was not really interested in going back.
Yeah. I often wonder for like the nomad. Planning the remote vacation is always funny to me now that I've been here, right? Like, I lived in Africa for a while, and I did my share of safari travel, which I'm not sure what you call that. I guess safari travel. And I tried to have an open mind about it, and I loved doing them, right? They were very fun. I did Kenya and Tanzania and other countries. That seems stranger and the longer I'm on the road, it seems stranger and stranger to do that. And I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if that's a theme. Like Matthew talked about it. I think Virginia talked about it. I think Gio even talked about it. I think 3 or 4 of your speakers talked about it. Do we assume another stop? Do we assume a next stop in the Vida Nomad? I mean, is there always going to be another? Yeah. And so do you hope then, well, when I'm there, then I'll do these other things, these other vacations that are sort of peripheral to where I'm at? Or no? Or is there no common theme that you're finding? Because I'm finding my desire to run back to Africa and do another safari is almost non-existent. Although I would love to do another one, I'm not going to. And I'm trying to figure out what that's about, if that's maybe deceleration with aging or what. But are you finding that the nomads tend to travel locally more? So you and I are going to do Myanmar or Cambodia because it's regional and easy?
I don't know. when we were in Mexico, in between Mexico and Brussels, we've been traveling to Australia.
Okay.
With the kids,
Right.
for 5 weeks, and we had the opportunity to go on with 5 weeks between 2 jobs, and we decided to go to Australia. So I think depends of the people,
Yeah.
but from my experience, now I'm 55, and we've been 20 years on the road, and moving from place to place start to be very tiring,
Right.
because each time it's a big effort to start from scratch. And for example, we decide, at first we didn't know, but we decide to go back to Lisbon. We spent 6 years in Portugal, in Lisbon, and we have many friends there, and we thought, okay, our backup plan will be Lisbon. We have already friends and a group of people, and we speak the language. The administration is all clear, so we have nothing. We just go there and just be there, and no effort to do. You see what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And so we come here because we wanted to, and it's an adventure. We wanted to go on in Thailand for a long time. I was supposed to arrive last year, but thank you, COVID.
Right.
I spent 1 more year in Hong Kong. This is our playground, and we want to have this adventure here because we love Thailand, and we are very interested to do this here. But for the rest, I think, it's a little bit tiring, and that one moment we wanted things to be easiest,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
That's for me.
Yeah, and it's not universal, of course, and it was a personal answer. But it struck me listening to these. You've mentioned yet another stop, right? So 7 in Lisbon. It's starting to add up here, right? And I'm sure there's 1 or 2 more you haven't mentioned. So Hong Kong is 1. So now I've got you in 5 different countries, including France. Was there anywhere else that you stopped?
Yes, we did 6 years in Lisbon, and then we came back to France 1 year, and then 7 years in Hong Kong.
Yeah. And so, Hong Kong is like a San Francisco. It's a space-constrained place. There's only so much real estate and a lot of people. And so you have, that was obviously probably the most small square footage stop on your tour, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And does that change the mood and the feel of the nomad life when you're boxed in, or do you just make do?
Hong Kong is a big hub in Asia, and especially for traveling.
Yeah.
Before COVID and before the protest and everything. And so it was quite nice at first to travel and to go all around. It was very interesting. And just to discover there's not one Asia, as the American or European people have this think Asia as a big thing. And but Thailand is very different from Japan. It's very different from China, from Indonesia, and which is very interesting and very, very, very. We learn a lot about this, and a very different culture, food, of course, and so people, reaction, and development. Everything is very different, so which is fantastic to discover. And then we had the privilege, or the non-privilege, I don't know, to be part of the history of Hong Kong also, with all the turns that happened with the Occupy Central 8 years ago, and after the protest, and then the COVID and the political situation changing.
Yeah.
And Hong Kong is a very interesting place. I started a job there and my own company, and because it's very... It has this feeling very strong on entrepreneur, and go on with your we give you everything very simply, and you can go on and go be entrepreneur, have your own company, and this is very strong and part of it very easily. So I decided to have to create my company there. I never had the idea before. Because that was so simple and makes sense.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
But on the opposite side, I think everything is very difficult because it's the city, the more expensive of the world, and everything is super expensive.
Yeah.
And working as crazy just to pay your rent doesn't make any sense. And even you didn't. Were a few months I didn't cover my renting for my studio. So yeah, it's struggling and it's very difficult. And I'm really understand the Hong Kong people that have so much problem with for renting place and have the life they really want. And part of the problem is housing and renting a place which is so expensive that they have to leave they have the whole family together because to be able to pay the rent and have food on the table and everything. So it's really, really rough. It's very complicated.
It is. It's a very fulsome answer or just a discussion around Hong Kong. I mean, how do you attack that? Great sort of London, Hong Kong, New York, real cosmopolitan, big, but mixed, many languages on every street, right?
Definitely.
Just noticeable every day of every week when you're walking down there. There's no presumption of a language behind the counter, right? It's like this could be anything.
Yeah.
In most places, especially in the areas where you and I have talked about, which is sort of downtown or even Kowloon. But that's interesting. And you identify the struggles as you move, rent, cost of a cell phone, the cost of urban transportation, how you get around. They're all essentially the same. They're all very similar, and it may be that more developed countries have easier solutions or cheaper solutions, but it doesn't mean that they're affordable. It's still,
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, so, you can take the bullet train to wherever, but, you may be watching it from a bike. It's still the difficulty of access. But so the move to Bangkok. So I didn't ask you this last week. So we're talking now, and I haven't done a good job of really focusing on Vie de Nomade, your podcast. I've introduced a couple of different concepts. You kick off each of the podcasts by asking your guest, and you mentioned it, sort of what was your frame of mind, or when you first hit the road, how you feeling, what was the deal? We've now described you as Paris, UK, Paris, Mexico, maybe Hong Kong, maybe a stopover, now Thailand, but fairly lengthy period of time. It's not; these aren't 5-week trips each time. This is bringing the possessions with and doing the whole thing, and digging in. Getting permitted or not being permitted properly, but not breaking the law. Obviously, you wouldn't do that. But showing up and being a trailing spouse and not being allowed to work was part of whatever that arrangement was. It's interesting, as you do it more, I think, and as I listen to you talk with your guests, you just get better at it. You just get very efficient at it, right? Moving, packing. One thing I wanted to ask, though, was sort of the sentiment. Do you remember back the first time you left the long stay, like Mexico? So your younger family. Was it heartbreaking to leave, and did you think, I'm never coming back? And was there that sort of notion of, I'm divorcing or I'm leaving a loved one here, and has that gotten easier over time? Or has there been in the life of the nomad, in your nomadic life, an ease of leaving places and saying goodbye easier, quicker? Or has there been that nostalgia? Because I do want to relay an anecdote of mine to you as a semi-guest on your podcast, sort of. For my nomad moment was really interesting to me, and it's happened twice, and I haven't seen it again. But how did you make those transitions in your head? Did you say, I love Mexico, whatever city you're in? I'm heartbroken to leave.
I think sometimes you have no choice.
Yeah.
And so you just have to deal with it, especially when you have the job on the line.
Yeah.
You have no choice. So I think also the problem for me I don't know if it's the same for everybody, but I think you, Caroline, you just mentioned before, she was just the same. She is that at some point you need to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
You're just fed up. Okay, I've been around. Now I understand, and I want something new. And I have to go back to something, to my curiosity, and to discover other things, and to challenge me again. And and for example, Lisbon. I love Lisbon. But it was very difficult when you go to Lisbon to live. It was very difficult for me to find a job. They prefer to give the job to the cousin of the uncle of the aunt. It's very clinic way, so it was very difficult. So I had to have my own job. I was a freelance as an event planner, and then I started with an art exhibition. But at the end of 6 years, I was just it was time to go. And maybe because the place is quite small and not so active as some places, and because I'm really passionate with art, and it's not very arty place. It's changed a little bit now with some artist who's going to push the walls away, but at that time it was not so arty, and it was like starting to feel it out of breath. Because I wanted to move to other place. After you deal with the life and the kids and you have to take care of the other things. But I was ready to go. Really
interesting.
And in Mexico, at the end of Mexico, we just stayed 2 years, and I was super frustrated. I would have loved to stay longer, but the job didn't allow us to stay longer. So we moved to Belgium, to Brussels, that I didn't like.
Right.
I was starting to use another words,
but of course,
I didn't like it. It was very difficult. Coming from Mexico, the weather was so bad, and the mentality, everything. It was very difficult for me to settle in Brussels with some struggling that I mentioned before.
Right.
And so we were so happy to move to Portugal and go back to the sun and the blue sky. And after, going back 1 year to Paris, and we thought, what are we doing here? When it's not for us anymore. We've been away for more than 12 years, and it was really hard to go back to Paris. And Hong Kong 7 years. It's a long time. It's a long time, and it was challenging. It was very interesting. We lived very amazing years there, but it was, for me, it was also time to go, especially because of my job and my passion of art. And Thailand has this super active movement in art scene. The art scene is super active, and people are very interested in art and handicraft, crafting, and everything, which is not the case at all in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is just money. So art is a question of investment and earn money with arty pieces, but nothing interested in no interest. So just art fairs, but it's again money. And for me it was because of the problem of the renting. I was really working hard and paying just my rent, and also this non-interest in arty thing. I was really ready to move out.
So did you have a gallery in Hong Kong as well?
I had an art studio and a big space where I was also curating a collective.
Oh, right, that's right. That's what we talked about. That. I'm sorry.
Collective exhibitions.
Yeah.
And I have my art pieces in a Hong Kong gallery.
Right.
But I was curating in my studio, doing the place was big enough to to have my teaching classes in sculpture,
Right.
and also having the galleries, the exhibitions.
That sounds remarkable to have a space big enough in Hong Kong to do that. But
Yeah, it was an industrial space, which was quite rough, but it works for that. For that kind of job, it works. Of course, if you have offices and you have to be very clean,
Right.
you can't do that in this kind of area. But it was working for that.
yeah. I think, the way you've described sort of the scene here in Bangkok, I think the guys in the room here, all guys, agree. We see a large receptive audience to help us design and develop and make and manufacture stuff that are ideas. And so we're very happy with our ability to get our guitars made and the case for the guitar made and the box sets and the things that we have. And so I don't know if I would know the absence of it. I certainly wouldn't have been able to do a lot of the things we did here, but I agree with your assessment, or at least my experience is similar to yours, that there are a lot of people here willing to take their existing craft and trade and extend it if what you're proposing is new or novel.
Exactly.
Right. It's just a willingness to say, yeah, okay, I'll bend that, or I'll make two of those, or I'll make it higher. Just the acceptance of the next idea is awesome here, which is very cool for us to do. So before I jump into the gallery stuff, I wanted to talk a little bit, I guess, about the boule d'art, the bubble of art, or the art concept that's behind the website. So I looked at that. That's on your business card. You and I laughed about having business cards, but it's on your card. And so I went to that website and looked. And there was sort of this curatorship concept you talked to me about. I saw other people's art, I'm pretty sure, on the homepage. And then I saw a series of what I guess would be your sculptings. Is that how we say that? So your work. Then you had the podcasts, and then you had some other anecdotes in there, I thought, which was pretty cool. So you were running that in Hong Kong, and now you're transplanting that here. And so do you have a space on Soi 79 that's the same or equivalent as an art space, or is there a gallery or a studio? Or
Actually, it's my place.
Okay.
I settle everything what I had in Hong Kong, and it's really big table. Everything was done on purpose for my art studio, and I'm just setting this in my house in Sukhumvit Soi 79. And
so you called that Onut, the Onut area, if anyone's
Onut
listening.
area, yeah, exactly.
Okay. Is
And
that over by you, Soi 79?
Onut,
All right. Neighbors.
best place.
And so I'm trying to orient most of the podcasts. We've stuck close to Asok or Prom Prong or downtown. So this would go Asok, Prom Prong, Ekamai, then Onut out towards you. So we're relatively close, 70 or so blocks away, but that can be 3 hours of traffic or 10 minutes depending on the day. So you're in Bangkok. You and I are Bangkok neighbors, and you came to town here, so you moved to the capital. You came a couple months ago, and so you're describing now your gallery, which I think I saw had a name on the website. I'm not sure if it does. Is there a name to search for your gallery, or is it?
For my art space?
Yeah.
It's just the same. It's Bulle d'Art.
Okay.
And on Instagram is Bulle d'Art Asia.
Okay.
And on Facebook is Bulle d'Art.
And so I saw there's teaching.
Bubble of Art.
Yeah, Bubble of Art.
In French, Bulle d'Art.
Right. I'm trying to think. Okay, yeah, Boule de Suif. Wasn't there? That's a different word. Okay, so you have classes. You teach there.
Yes, I'm teaching sculpture with a clay, and I'm teaching to adults and to kids. After that, you have to, with the kids, the majority of the kids, I start with 8 years old kids. Before, it's more difficult because people don't understand, but you need to have strength in the hands. And if they have too small hands, it's very difficult to play with the clay and do something with it. So yeah, we can just manage to have 1 hour and trying to. They love to the small one. They love to cut the clay. So you
course.
give a kind of tool and they cut the clay and they spend 1 hour cutting the clay. They love it. But that's it. So it's not very interesting. Learning techniques and basic techniques is more interesting. And I give a theme to the kids, and they create their own thing. For example, doing a house today, and so you have the majority of the youngest kids make big houses, and which is very funny. It looks like proportional, and the eldest one are more doing houses a little bit more sophisticated with something on more purpose, with a purpose. And adults, I have we go on with some every week coming classes, and we started with to make a full body, to learn to make a full body sculpture. We can learn to make portraits, and then when you get all those skills, you are able to do whatever you want, and you can come with a personal project, and we think about it and we go on.
Cool.
And so we do this with clay, and then we glaze it. So we use glazing, different type of glazing or type of oxide, and to put the color on the sculpture. That's the fun part. And we can mix everything, so it's quite great. Yeah, people love it, and for me also it's a very good therapy, and it's a meditation moments, because you're really focused on what you're doing and you're forgetting everything else. And I think go part of art therapy that you can do, and it's fun.
Well, that's cool. So today we're going to try something sort of new here. We're going to finish this interview, then go to your studio, and then go to a third place, because I didn't want you to have to confuse the location with our stop somewhere in Thailand. So we're getting 3 for 1 today. But I was curious, was the plan coming here to have shows and curate as well, and that just is not happening because of COVID yet, or is that a lesser?
Yeah, that's part of the thing. When I decided to come here, I met some Thai artists, and we are going to collaborate. But of course, I've lost 1 year already, and with the COVID situation, it's not so easy. But it's going to come along, and the idea also is to promote some Thai artists, that may emerging ones that are not on the spot already, and that's part of the things that I want to do, and also bring some European artists here and to show their work. So make the exchange between Thai artists, showing them in Europe, and just go the other way around. That's part of sort of things I want to do in the future. We'll see, 2022 and maybe 2023. And after, there's quite big events, art events here, like the Biennale and everything. That could be very interesting going on. For now, starting my sculpture class, and then go on with my online gallery that I'm starting, and and trying, if I can, in 2022, I would love to have some pop-up gallery to show off some emerging artists I have and I know, and I like their work.
Yeah, I keep wondering. I mean, we had a discussion last week where you talked about sort of the formative or the opening moments of learning to work with clay, and having in one context, I think it was bowls, we were discussing, you talked about centering your glob of material so it didn't spin off. It's some racing description I can't give, but and then I said it was funny because the chef Jakub was sitting in that chair, and he was talking to me about how long he spent dicing and cutting and the various cutting techniques. And I thought there's clearly artistry in this, and for my music, there's there's practice and there's working on dexterity and virtuosity and maybe not getting there, but a lot of this is putting in the time. During the COVID time period, you moved during it, so that's a big enough distraction. But were you working the whole time, or were you storing your figures that you worked on, and with the thought of I'm just going to work, or was COVID a sort of a mind meltdown for you as an artist?
I was supposed to move to Bangkok on June 2020.
2020, so okay.
So I was able in Hong Kong to stretch a little bit the time of my art studio. So I closed it on July 2020.
Ouch.
And so when I came back in September 2020 to Hong Kong, I had no studio anymore, but I still had my students who were like, Christine, try to find a way for us to go on with this sculpture class, whatever. So I try with a friend, Hong Kong friend who had an art studio, to go to his place and continue to organize things like this. But it's never the same because you don't deal with a kiln, you don't have all the things that you're supposed to have. So it's a little bit frustrating. And then I start my podcast, which was for me another way to express myself, and I think it was very interesting. And also I had a few exhibitions. I had my last big exhibition there with friends. Mathieu, you told it before. Right. He did a big book with a poetry, as you told before. Poetry illustrating some photos of another friend, of photos of Hong Kong, and it was really nice to have this collective exhibition before leaving Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And so I had to work a little bit on my pieces, but it was a little bit difficult with the COVID and a lot of places closed in Hong Kong. I try not to be bored and try to go on with my activity, but it was a little bit difficult.
Yeah,
it was a very weird year.
Yeah, podcasting filled a big hole for you then, so that's cool, right? And seems like every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks was part of the progression, so that's...
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And learning, because you have to learn how to deal with the internet thing and editing things and microphone and wind editing.
Yeah, right, Shago? Editing, Frank? Yeah, these guys. I say, when is it going to be done? And they're like, just rendering it takes a night, right? I'm like, all right, do it at night.
Exactly.
So then so are you back in the groove now, sculpting here, doing your work, or is it just been knocked out of your head and it's going to take a while for you to land? And
no, it's good. Yesterday I went to Pottery Clay Thailand company. Nice. to pick up some clay and to try, because that's also something you don't think at first. Is that each time you're challenged, because new clay, new climate, and how you're gonna deal with this. So when I started really to play with clay and started to do my own pieces, really, it was in Portugal.
Yeah.
And when I arrived in Hong Kong, you have to use plenty of plastic, which is not the case when you're in Portugal.
Plastic in the clay to hold it together?
Not in the clay, but to cover the clay for it not to dry too quickly.
Right.
And you have to learn to use another type of clay because it's not coming from the same places. So you have to deal with this. And so yesterday I bought some clay to try first and to see how it's going to work, how you can fire it in the kiln before giving it to my students and just say, okay, you're going to be screwed because we're going to discover the clay, the clay and the way of manipulating this new clay together. Doesn't make sense, especially when you have beginners. And you don't want the kids to have their piece exploding in the kiln. And that's why also I called my places a bubble of art. Right. Is that air bubble in the clay.
Kiss of death.
when it's dry, you put the pieces you work on for like 20 hours, you put in the kiln. If there's just one air bubble inside, it explodes.
Huh.
So it's destroyed in thousands pieces. So it's very frustrating. So, and especially when you have kids, you can't have these things to happen.
Yeah.
So it's very important for me to start to work with that clay and fire that clay before starting my classes. So I will start my classes in January. Early January, I started with kids. I'm going to start with kids. And I have to start my own pieces and have my samples doing now.
So interesting. So let's talk about the clay a little bit. I'd never even thought of this. My skills, if I have any, will require a book or an online version of the book. Prepackaged strings from where I don't know they come, in a nice airtight thing so they don't get rusty. I'm not making anything. I may be making the song, right, or the podcast, but it is a far cry from standing in front of an oven watching stuff explode or mixing clay. So I had never thought like you buy clay. I thought you bought powder, you get water, you make sure you got the test tube with the beaker, the goggles on, and you mix it. And if you're lucky, you have an assistant who mixes it for you. But you actually buy raw clay, like clay. It's like a
You buy a pack of clay.
Huh. Like 100 pounds or 5 pounds, or what does it look like?
It's normally it's between 12 and 25 kilo.
Huh. Okay, so that's double that, so 25 pounds. So, and is there a universally recognized price for clay around the world, or how does this work?
After that, it depends of the taxes, and it's just like everywhere.
I'm thinking Siberian clay is rare. It's not like they have it. I would think Mekong clay is probably pretty voluminous. I would think you could get it from a lot of places around here. Maybe not.
Yeah, but at the same time, you need some clay that have some texture, and so. Yes, you can go in your garden and just pick up some clay and do something with it. But after, it depends of what you're doing. And if you do throwing on a wheel, you will need a very smooth clay, type of clay. For me, my pieces are 1 meter high and very thin most of the time. So I need a more rocky, sandy clay. I use this. Maybe it's easiest for me to buy the clay in packs, and I'm not struggling with a go 100 or 300 kilometers from Bangkok to find the right place. But it's really weird at the same time, because when I was in Hong Kong, for example, the packs come from England.
Go figure.
So this is I think historical thing, coming from Hong Kong, from London,
right,
or England.
Right. Just some guy had the boat that came over and delivered the clay, and it just kept coming.
Exactly. And at the same time, they told me we have some porcelain in China, which is not too bad, but now the quality is less and less good. It used to be very good, but now it's not so good. And so if it's for everything to explode all the time, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And so you're losing a lot of material and a lot of money. So no big deal.
So do you know where your clay comes from now?
This time it's coming from Thailand.
Where?
So I'm gonna check how it is, but it's coming from Thailand.
Do you know where?
No, I haven't checked. It's all written in Thai, so I have to go on with my skills in Thai prasad before knowing exactly where.
I'm sort of oddly interested in, like, I can just picture the grueling spot that you go cut these big chunks of clay out of some clay wall, and then the riverbank takes it back over and it grows back, or I don't know how it works, but it just seems like I never thought, like, where does the clay come from? And so there's probably a good place that's near a river.
Yeah, but at the same time, when you have a sandy clay or rocky sandy clay, that's the manipulation of people. They put the rocky pieces inside the clay, and they mixed everything and they packed it. It's not supernatural, not coming straight from the ground. But I think everything's possible, and you can mix the clay with the pigments to have your clay colored. This manipulation, you can do it on your own, and it's funny to have all these colors and details with different colors.
Yeah. So did you train yourself for this, or did you have schooling in this, or how did you pick clay? I mean, what or sculpting, or whatever words I'm supposed to use here.
That's very interesting. I was in Brussels, so the place that I didn't like.
Right.
And I was struggling really hard, and I went to a life coach, and I had this coaching. And at one time she said, okay, all this creativity, all these things you have with the art, all kind of art and stuff, you have to do something about it. And so find something to do. And I went, and sculpting was logical because the sense of touching, and working with your fingers and feel the thing and feel the texture and create something from scratch with your hands, that makes sense for me. And I have very big problems with paintings, for example. Using a brush for me is something's wrong. I start with a brush and I finish with my finger in the paint, and start with the colors with my fingers, and it's just the same with ink. It's really, and I'm really, really bad at drawing, for example. 2D is not good for me. 3D makes sense. So I don't know. It's part of it is really physical. The touching and feeling with my body, and not through a brush or through a pencil. I don't know.
That's interesting how you describe that. It makes me think, a couple of things jumped in my head. I'm not sure if this means I'm not a good conversationalist, because you were telling me things and I started immediately thinking about other things as opposed to fully concentrating on what you were saying, but I was listening all along, and I think of the way Frank plays one of his songs, and he grabs all the strings and yanks them away, and I never use my fingers to do anything. I'm always using a pick. And so when he wrote the song, and so he plays bass in the band, so I play his guitar part, and I'm strumming it, which sounds completely different. So it's milquetoast, and there are times when I look at how he's just pulling the strings away from the guitar, in particular because he plays bass, and it's so much harder than I would do. And the song sounds different when he plays it than when I play it. And I thought, just in that, when you're talking, you know when you like what you're doing, or when you're drawn towards something, I think, and fighting that in another swim lane is sometimes counterproductive. You know what I mean? Like, if I start to try and get big dexterity finger picking, it's going to be a long time. And I don't really even want to do it. I'll be honest with you. I like sort of where I'm at in the space now, and if I improve it. But it's funny how you said, like, painting ain't going to work. And so you pursue this thing. And I imagine there are times when you're lugging large bags of clay around, you're like, I wish I was an oil painter, right? Because it's light and easy, and you can put it in a backpack and scan it, right? But you can't scan a...
It's very funny because when the kids come to my workshops, it's very visible. The one who are going to like it very much is the one who has clay in the hands and gonna do like this, or gonna do like this, and it doesn't matter. And you have others that are like, oh my God, I have clay on my hands, and which is very funny. And you exactly know the one who's going to come back or just take so much pleasure to put the hands on the clay and do something with it, and it's going to be fun. And the other one are like, oh my God.
Well, I wonder if, I always wonder when we play psychologists, because I think that is a skill, and I think psychiatry is a skill, and I think if you have it, you have it. But there could be an argument that the one that says, if you keep yelling at them to do it and they have a tortured childhood, they could be your next master craftsman, right? So, I just wonder, like, when it's easy and fun, does that have a different result than if it's painful and scarring and brutal? And I'm not being glib, but I just wonder, like, sometimes the suffering is comes out in a different or better art, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about too, which could be nonsense.
I'm not a bad mood crying artist. Okay. I'm more like, okay, everything's fine. I'm fun. I have maybe some emotion, sad emotion, or hard emotion that I want to express in my pieces. But if I'm really in a very, very bad mood, or I'm not very good at working, but I think those kids that are like, oh my God, I'm going to. Sometimes it's just because parents say, okay, don't just be dirty or something like this. And sometimes I just take the girls or the boy and just say, okay, clean your hands. You're gonna see there's nothing happening, and it can be very clean very easily. So after it's finished and they go on with what they're doing, it doesn't matter. And sometimes they were very happy at the end to have dots like here, and paintings here because they finish painting with the acrylic paint. That's but I think it's part of the experience. And some of them at the end say, some came because the parents asked them to come. They were just fed up with the kids at home, and they want them to go to do something different from being on the video games or whatever. And some kids like it, others don't like it. The majority, they came back. Because it's a part of you do something and you're so happy to have done something with your hands at the end, and something that you choose to do, because I really give them the freedom to do whatever they want. Even if I give a theme, they still have their personal thing at the end.
Yeah. There is something about ownership, property ownership, or ownership of a task it rarely seems to go too wrong. Like having someone cook, or having someone build something, or having someone do work product at work, if it's law firm or whatever, is, if there's an environment that's conducive to making, it seems like a good environment, and things happen. And so you show up at your studio and I got my chair in the corner and I'm going to have my lump of clay and I'm ready to go. I think there's, the image of the starving artist and working with scraps of garbage to get the medium done, is an attractive one. And I think it's very French based, because I think some of the big French successes did that and were declared victorious, right, in the end, maybe died poor. But, it's an interesting thing to have, because struggle or not, poor rich, having the space to do it is a huge part of the gamble. And even if it's a tiny space.
Definitely.
Yeah. But the mental, I just can't imagine, sculpting skydiving, right? So jumping out of a plane and sculpting. There are limitations to the time and space, and the most comfortable one isn't skydiving, it's having the table, right? And so, whatever the tools are to do it. And as you move away from that, these are challenges that are just external, right? And it makes it hard. And so I always come back to, if you have your space, if you have your spot for your stuff and can do it, you're going to do it. And in the absence of that, if you have your drive, you're going to do it anywhere. And then you're going to get yelled at by your neighbors, and you're going to have problems, and the whole other thing. But space and well-being, go hand in hand with the repetition that's required in a lot of this stuff, I think. And I may be wrong. I'm not even sure why I'm bringing this up right now, but I think the way you described it to me with these kids, I don't have kids myself, so I don't know what the thinking is, and I haven't watched sort of the relearning that I did through my children, so I don't know where the awareness is in that. But it seems like the clay is the elemental. If you're going to go back, right, as forming something with your hands, it's boy, that feels like a primitive thing that we should all have and know how to do. And then to make it into high art is the challenge, right? Is to get the bust of your father or whatever that's identical, and then or your abstract pieces to work the way you want them to work. But that you're dealing with something that is really, native, genetic, something like.
Yeah, but if you think about it, who didn't never do when he was kid
Right.
a sand castle?
I got an ashtray I made.
A sand castle. Everybody did a sand castle. You go on the seaside. Every kid did a sand castle. Or, just with a
Bucket.
wet
Yeah.
sand,
Yeah.
you make this sculpture.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
So coming back to the basics,
Yeah.
I think, and the only thing is to allow you to do it.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah. I mean, and
think
so.
that's it. It's just like painting or something. I think it's just. I think everybody can just take a pencil and start to sketching, and it doesn't matter if it's not perfect.
Right.
Just enjoying the moment of doing this, and allowed you to do it.
Yeah.
And that's it. And sometimes you're super happy of what you've done, and other time you scratch it. It happens to me to start a sculpture, and then I didn't like it, and you just destroy everything and go back to the small ball at first, and just go on with another thing because you don't like what you've done, and it was not exactly what you expected. I don't know. It's I think nowadays we have spectrum with always. There's plenty of people who don't allow themselves to do things they want to do.
Right.
Even a little bit.
Yeah.
It could be, why not just taking 5 minutes and just open a book or go to the movie, or I don't know, it could be anything.
Yeah. Well, as I sat here and listened to your classes, I mean, that type of sanctuary seems to be essential, and to get in there and sit down and have a spot to put your bag when you come in, or your phone away from the table, and having the beauty of not being able to touch your phone because your hands are a mess. I can think of very few other things, unless you're skydiving again. It's not real great for phones, I think, but it seems like a different headspace you can get into here. So, to me, the gallery is the sanctuary, right? There's some rules or not, but it's a great
bubble.
place. The bubble, there it is.
A bubble where you forget everything. You forget the outside world. I just have something. This is something happened in Hong Kong, and I think it's very illustrating what we're saying.
Okay.
Because of the COVID, many kids couldn't have a big Christmas party.
All right.
And so I opened my studio and to families. So they were coming, the parents and the kids all together and do some sculpture. And once...
that was allowed because it was the family going in.
Yes, and it was not a huge group. And one day you have this dad who was on the phone. He's a banker. He's on the phone, blah, 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 blah. He come back to the table and just put the phone out. And he was with his kids. And suddenly one of the kids, 8 years old boy, just look at the dad and say, "Wow, Dad, you're an artist." Because the dad had done something that was for the kid super nice.
Right, legit.
And he was so impressed because the dad normally is just a banker on the phone, and for the kid, the dad is just a banker.
Right.
And he doesn't know even what he's doing really. You see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And that time it was like, wow, so impressed by the work of the dad. And the dad did just something nice, and the kid was impressed. And I think the eyes of the kid on his dad at that moment changed completely.
Yeah.
And this is fun, and I think it's worth it.
You think Dad felt the moment?
I don't know. I'm sure he went back to the phone now.
Sorry, Dad. We're not going to give the banker any credit. Heartless.
But I think he was touched. At that moment, he was touched. I think he heard the kid.
You hope so. I mean, I guess in the world of good stories and bad stories, you hope he went home that night. But hopefully it wasn't because he had to learn it because of some client of his was going to go on a sculpting weekend in the Hamptons or something. Got to learn how to cut clay or my client's going to hate me. Well, look, Caroline, Christine, I'm sorry, it's been a pleasure talking today. Like I said, we do this in 3 parts, and I'm thinking just to sort of honor my time commitment to you is to head to your studio now. So we jump in the car together and head over there, bring some cameras, and maybe you could show us what we've been talking about. But what I wanted to do is walk through the various things that I see you involved in, and one was the podcast, Vies Nomad. The next was the website art side, which was Hong Kong based, and think how you set it up, but then you can see photos of your current studio, so we'll head there. But I think the third part, it'll be interesting to see. I want to take a short walk with you through a part of town, Talat Noi, and there's an outdoor art exhibition that is just in a fantastic location, and we'll stop by a coffee shop there, check the weather, and then try and walk down this short street. But I think it's maybe you and I were drawn here for the same reason, and I think it might be some of this. And so it'll be interesting to do a nomad walk with you here and say, like, what in the world are we looking at here? So that'll be the third part. But Franco, why don't we shut this down unless there was something you wanted to say, or if you wanted to call out your website again or your Facebook or anything, we can get it on the record here. But why don't we shut this down, get in the car, and head over to your space?
Yes. Just if you want to go to listen and you understand French, you can go on Vies Nomad podcast.
Viedenom.
It's lives, because Nomad has different lives.
Right, Vies, Nomad.
Exactly.
Okay.
Nomad. And
Spotify and on your Instagram?
Spotify, I have Instagram, Vies Nomad also. We have an illustration of different episodes, so each people.
Yeah, beautiful illustrations, by the way.
Yeah,
and a nice theme song as well. well done, well bundled. I mean, it's worth just clicking it to listen.
It's a friend in Hong Kong, Stefan, who did the music for me.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds awesome.
It's the jingle for Vies Nomad. It's nice. I had this privilege, and
so those are those. Spotify. Any others?
Apple Podcast. Plenty different. Yes. Yeah.
Well, good. Great to listen to. So thanks for those. And there's also one tricky little sound effect you do. It's like a Vies Nomad, or some I was like, what? Tricky.
Yeah.
All right. Well, great. Well, thanks again for coming in, and we'll shut down here, and next shot will be at the gallery. Okay, Franco? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful. All right. All right. Good. Well, all right. We are in part 2 of the Roman Anton podcast. We are back at your studio, which is on the top of the building you have here, and you are several rooms, but we've set up. What I wanted to do is see some of the artwork. So this is it live. This is the first time I'm seeing it. So these are works that you've done, these 5 sculptings here?
Yes, that's part of the things I like and I do. That's really my work. Back to me, it's work I do with my students. So it's more samples that give ideas and stuff. But this is really what I'm doing. That's really me.
Okay.
Trying to, with these pieces, show my emotions, feelings, or the impression I have of events coming in. And in Hong Kong, and with the COVID, for example, we had so many things impacting us, and that's the things I like. I like also playing with color, texture, and also I like disproportion. So that's why you have big people with a very small head, for example, or I have another one, but not here, downstairs, with a normal guy with a big feet. For example, I like these proportions. Depends of what I want to express.
So Frank took some photos earlier of the bags of clay, so maybe we'll splice those in when we're talking, Frank. But and then as we came into the entryway, you have your kiln. It's KILN. It's the thing where you put wet clay in, and it
Yes, you have first you make your sculpture and your piece. When your piece is done, you like this one. This one is rough. So when it's go out from the kiln, first it's drying, then you put in the kiln to fire, you have what we call a bisque firing.
Okay.
And it becomes like this rough. And then on top of it, you put some glazing to have the color. So when the glazing is done, so you have between 2 and 3 layers, depending on the clay and depending on the effect you want. You can mix some glazing, so you can have, for example, a normal glazing, and on top of it put a glazing with effect, like this one, for example. And you can put also some texture, like that's why I wanted to show you this. I can use this kind of things, which is natural, and gonna put in on top of it. So like here, I put some here, and this is natural. It's raffia. I don't know the name in English. It's like herbs, dry herbs, and it's gonna burn in the kiln. And you just keep the clay that goes around it, and so the clay keep the shape and keep the texture. But the clay is just getting dry. But this is burning, disappearing, but you keep the texture.
Look at that.
That's the great thing.
So has that one been in the kiln yet?
Yes, for a long time now.
And then you put.
I just put some what we call patina.
Okay.
Patina is just varnish, matte varnish with pigments going on top of it. So that's all. But I didn't fire it again. It's just patina. Patina doesn't go to the kiln again. But all the others are with a glazing.
And so the glaze, so this one would have, is this like green glaze color and blue glaze color together? Or does this
yes, I put a green glazing first, and then I put a green blue with effects glazing.
So your kiln didn't look this big, is it?
No, this one I did it in Hong Kong in a governmental places where they have this big kiln. Yeah. And my ceramic kiln just kind of accept this high is the highest I can have. 57 centimeter, which is quite already big, and I can have big pieces. A larger one making, or both like this can enter very easily. And
so do you is it an electric kiln? I saw there was a plug, so it's just electricity generated heat.
Exactly.
What temperature does it fire at, or how do you say that?
Most of the times when you do bisque firing is 960 degrees Celsius. And when you have glazing, some of them are 1000 Celsius, and others are 1,300.
That's hot.
So the maximum is 1,300 degree.
So you're the third, in the last 3 guests, the chef, I didn't like the knives, the boxing, I didn't like the punching on the fingers, and as a guy who holds a guitar sometimes, like sticking my hands into 1,000 degree anything is probably not going to happen, but have you, I mean, is it dangerous working in the kiln?
No. The kiln is completely closed, and it goes up when the kiln is brand new and you just use it a couple of times. It's take 8 hours for firing. So it goes very slowly till the 160, and then goes slowly.
I see.
And you wait, then it's very nearly cold to open it. So you're not supposed to open it. And if you open it in between, the air can alterate everything. So if you do this with a glazing, it's ruined. That's for sure. But no, it's you just have to switch on, and you wait till the end, and then you open it. Still a little bit warm normally, but you have special gloves, and it's fine.
Yeah, and goggles or glasses or something. Okay.
No, not really to close them. You use some mask like this one.
Okay.
For glazing sometimes depending on the one you use, but now they are getting better. Before it was not good stuff inside. It's getting cleaner. I don't know how to do more chemical, but other thing kind of take chemical.
Yeah, some ESG component. Well, that's interesting. So do your students, when you have classes, do you say come back next week and they'll be kilned, or whatever the verb is?
Yes.
So I imagine there's some anticipation in that, how it's going to look.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's very surprising also with the glazing. You never know what's gonna go out. Sometimes you have great things happening. Other times it's not so nice. Sometimes you don't expect problems inside, but from a piece to another, because when you you put on a kiln, you have different pieces inside. And I remember once, but a long time ago, I had a piece of mine, she was just black, matte black, and another piece of another person was with a yellow, and during the firing, a splash of the yellow jumped from the piece of the lady on mine. Hopefully it was just there, so it was like decoration, but it could have been here or whatever, and my piece would have been ruined. So things happening in the kiln you never expect. So sometimes it's very funny. Yeah,
I guess that's the community of the kiln, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If you got your magnum opus, you don't put it in with someone else's, right? You say, I'm going in alone.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, there it is. So I don't see any in the other rooms or here. I don't see any type of hand tools that would suggest.
Oh, I have many on the other place. I can show you some.
No, I'm just curious. I mean, we talked about the hands and sort of shaping it. And these I can understand how you get to your final parts, and I can see you doing these with your hands. But did you study, or were you trained, or do you work with tools for shaping? In particular, as I look at some of the faces. It'd probably be hard to do with the fingers.
At first, the best way is to modeling with your fingers, and when you have the shape, the main shape, you start to use tools. And also depends on the way you're working, because all those are empty. And I work it with a coiling like this one, but bigger. So that's my main work. But if you do it like this one, for example, full shape, you have to empty it. Just to, as we said before, with a bubble, the air bubble. The more clay you have, the more air bubble you risk to get. So you have to empty things. And we have special tool for emptying and cleaning inside and take the clay out. This is the thing.
I see. So that was a solid chunk at some point, and you take the middle out like a pumpkin.
Yeah, it was. It was a full. You play with the full things, and then you just empty it. And for details, of course, you have some tools. The majority are wooden tools.
And so does that empty space when it's wet? Does it sit on something in the kiln, or is it just a hole underneath?
It's a hole underneath, and you just stay like this, and whatever you wait for it to be dry before putting in the kiln.
So.
And if you are frightened that it's going to fall off, this work means that you haven't done a good job first. And if it's really wet at first, and you need to wait a little bit and continue your piece when it's a little bit drier. Harder, and especially when you do big things like this, you go on with one part, and then you wait for it to dry just a little bit to be able to continue. Otherwise, it could just fall off.
So I noticed, is this a gold leaf on here, or how?
Yes.
So that's a tie thing almost. So let me ask about this. So on the inside of this, I'm sorry if I'm dragging it, but
it's not fragile. You can use it like this.
So would you ever like this is fired clay on
glazing clay?
No glazed.
Inside no glaze.
And so does that? Do you not glaze the inside for a reason, or is it just a waste of money and product?
Exactly. If you make a bowl like this one, and you want to use it, and of course, because you see the two different sizes, you have to glaze it. This one was an exercise just to show how to do things. But I glazed it everything. So except here. Because in the kiln it's gonna glue on the shelf, and you can't take it out. So it's just a point of but for the rest it's all glazed.
I never thought of that. So that rough edge is because of execution. So same for China?
Yes, of course.
Huh. So would you ever go back and put some other product on there to cover that bottom?
I can, but the majority of things you use some varnish or you use some paintings that gonna dry on their own and have no sticky things. Because the problem, for example, things you don't understand and think before, it's that the glazing, if you glaze it again, you put in the kiln again, it's gonna melt because the glazing is just rocks of glass mixed with the water and some oxide and pigments and whatever. So it's reacting very strongly with the firing, the temperature. So if you, for example, I do this one I'm not happy with the outside, it's not well done and you have part too light or something, you say, okay, I put one more layer and I put back in the kiln, but everything's gonna change. It's not just the part that you put again more, everything's gonna change because every part is going to react again to the temperature.
But you said
that's why it's challenging when you start again.
Yeah, okay. But you said that sometimes you'll do 3 coats and put it in 3 separate times?
No, it's 3 coats. You put one, wait for it to be dry, put again, you have 3 times same time.
I see. Interesting.
Yeah. To have a deep color, otherwise you
can. Right, because this one seems to be, I'm not sure what word I'd use, the thickest, the deepest, like the smoothest. This one seems to have other elements in it too, so it's hard for me to judge it. So this seems like a thicker glazing on it. Is that true or no? I'm trying to figure out how to describe these things that I'm seeing.
It's a glazing called crank, which is very sandy, and it's interesting to play with it because it's strong. Not real big risk to have a bubble.
Okay.
And I used it a lot with the kids. It's exactly this color.
Do you call it crack?
Crank.
Crank.
That's the name. That's the name of the clay.
Okay.
And if you put your finger inside, you will see it's very sandy and rocky.
Very rough. Yeah.
Very rough.
As opposed to this tall one here, which looks like I'm almost looking at the clay, right?
Yeah. It's the same clay, and this is the same here, and you can see how it's really sandy.
All right.
You see, it looks really like sand.
So this is one of your works as well here. This has this sort of extended neck again. So
yes.
You've said that thematically is something you're drawn to. The tall figures, the small heads, the long neck.
Exactly. But yeah, this one I use quite a lot with especially the teenagers and the kids to make their portraits.
Do you have an explanation for that as to why that's in your artwork and repetitive and recurring, or is this just how you do it? Is there some long narrative, like you saw a giraffe when you were a kid, or something that you've carried forward?
Actually, I don't know. Maybe I didn't even think about it, but I think maybe it's just maybe it's whole connection. Maybe sometimes it's just don't think too much and just go on with what you're feeling. Maybe that's why there's have small heads. I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know.
There we go. We don't have an answer for that.
I don't know. I have no idea actually. But it makes sense. I don't know why, but it makes sense to me.
And I'm not saying it shouldn't or that there should be an explanation.
No.
Is this an earlier work?
Yes, I did this in Hong Kong. This one.
Because they're becoming less overtly human, right? And it's less a study of the body and more a study of the concept now, right? You're leaving the...
Yes, but it's more like really, as I said, it's more like study for person coming to my studio to work and to learn how to go on with the face and how to make the nose and all these kind of things. But my work is less figurative.
Okay.
That's for sure.
Well, are those all yours over there? Because at one point it was very figurative.
Yeah. This one is I studied to. It's very interesting. You have all the parts of the face that are with the layers of skin and whatever. This is the layer of the skin we have really in percentage on the face. So you see that here it's deeper, it's larger here, and very thin here.
Right.
It's very funny, and all the muscles we have. So that's make the structure of the face.
Right. And then you had the other fellow over there who is pretty close to a portraiture or a bust there.
Oh, so yes, that's one. And
I don't mean to have you lifting stuff and moving it around, but it's interesting.
It's fine. So. It's fine. And this one also, this is the same. It's the crank I used before.
Yeah, it's that rough.
And very rough. And I wanted to make it rough. I wanted the face to be rough because that guy was a guy I met in the bus in Hong Kong.
There you go.
And he was really not nice with the people, and especially with this old lady. And so I took the picture of the guy, and I wanted to make something rough with him.
Wherever you are, sir, we don't apologize, but that looks like me in profile, so it could have been me, so I'm getting worried here. Well, this is very cool. I'm glad we got to come out here and take a look at this. So, classes you're starting to have more coming out of COVID. You do them here. Other room or downstairs or in various spots, specific days, but you can fire over the weekend and come back the next week and do your thing. You've got groups of kids or individual. I'm sure that's probably fun too for someone like me who's going to have office hours and show up late and want an hour.
Yeah, I will have classes at night also.
Cool.
Yes, I know some. I had some clients and people coming in Hong Kong yelling, I'm mad with my boss and just fed up and blah blah blah, and after 1 hour you were like, I forgot everything. That's fun, and I have my 3 hours I'm just relaxing, and I can go home with no more pressure, and I think it's really meditating, and it's a really moment, this bubble I was talking about, and it makes sense. Yes.
Well, cool. Well, how about this? Thanks for showing us this. This is very cool. I'm glad we got to see it. How about if we shut this down and we jump back in the car and go to the other side of town and go look at Talat Noi, and we will take a look. You can explain some art to me when we get there.
Okay.
All right? Sound good?
Try my best.
Let's shut her down and hit the road. All right. All right, so we're in part 3 of the podcast now. Welcome. Where are we? Patina?
Patina.
And the
Patina Cafe, or I don't know.
Patina Cafe. If you go out the doors here, we're in Talat Noi, and we're going to go out in a couple of minutes to take a look at some of the artwork on the street. They have a outside art display that I wanted your feedback on, so I wanted to come and check this out. But we walked here on Soi 22. We walked up the street. It's a real cool part of town. So this is the third part of the podcast where we go out somewhere in Bangkok to check it out. So we could have said that was at your studio, but I knew you'd like this part of town too.
Yeah, love it.
Even though you've been here for 4 months, you probably know more about the city than I do, but I didn't think you'd know this one yet.
No.
So Talat Noi. So it's hard for you to do your work in public, right? Like to come to a coffee shop and work.
I cannot.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
No, I cannot.
Yeah.
Too much stuff and too heavy thing, and you don't know how many piece of clay you need. So I'm not going to go around with a 5 kilo of clay in my pocket.
Right.
So yeah, it's better to have a place to work on. Otherwise you have a certain purpose. You go someplace, you can just settle for a few hours. And so you bring all you need, the things you need, and you could just go on with that. I did this, for example, at the last exhibition I did in Hong Kong, because I wanted to make an event during the exhibition. So I carried on one of my pieces I've done, but not fired, just dry, and I painted it on live. It was the first time I did this in on social media performance, and it was so funny because I forgot to switch on the right button. So I start to talk blah 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 and make all around the exhibition, and suddenly I've seen that it was not on. So I had to start again.
Well, let's check. Frank, are we on? Because we hope we're recording this. But funny story, just to prove the point, right?
Exactly.
Is once you get outside, we talked about recording your podcast, getting the background noise.
Exactly. So you have to deal with other things that you don't really know about, and so it's always new experience and new challenges. And so I painted it live, and it was fun. And then the day after, because of the pandemic, we had to do 2 openings of the exhibition. And on the second opening, I broke my piece.
Perfect.
Live again. And people were like, why are you destroying your piece? What's the point? And I say, I call it shit year.
There you go.
And it was good to just break everything and think, okay, new world, new country, new life, change. So forget everything. That was a good metaphor for me to just have this piece and break it and
so you leave
shit year and forget it.
Yeah. And now you're
start
here.
Again.
Fresh start, Bangkok.
Exactly.
A great studio to work out of, and I thought of you when I saw this place. I thought, I bet you this is right up your alley. So it'd be cool to see you guys have a show here. I think this place would look good. But
oh, fantastic!
Yeah,
it's first thing I thought about is just some paintings here and some sculptures that would be just amazing.
My friend Tommy Diaz and I in New Orleans used to go to the Napoleon Bar, and this brings back such evocative images. Even like the staining of that wall back there, but just I assume that's mold, right? And the noise of the air conditioners and stuff. But such a cool little spot. So we're going to walk straight out on this street in a couple minutes and go we'll take a look at the art, and Frank will film part of that. So won't be too contrived. But
and the name of the coffee is very evocative because it's very patina on the walls, and it looks like it. So it's very creative place, and a lot of imagination is coming in from there, and you can see everybody's taking pictures, and it's very evocative.
Yeah, it's a little misleading when you walk in, right? But anyway, I'm glad you got to come here with me. Let's finish our coffees and go out and hit the street. Franco, let's shut down here and maybe take some cameras outside. All right, thank you. So we're on Trok San Chao Rong Kuak. I'm never going to be able to say that, Franco. That's where we're at. But we're taking a look at an outdoor art exhibit here that I thought you'd be interested in seeing. I told you, I thought of you when I went into the Patina Cafe, and now we're walking on the street. So we got maybe about 100 pieces of artwork out here. And I just thought we'd take a walk down here and check this out, okay?
That's very impressive because it's seems to be on plexi, printed on plexi, which is and the quality of the photo is very interesting.
Yeah.
And I would be very interested to know Bangkok Design Week 2020.
Yeah, I recall there being a show, but I thought it was last year, not 2020. This looks a little older.
Yeah. So it's a portrait of Charonkrong, right?
This is the street here. The main street is called Charonkrong.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But it's just showing what it is.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not a very. I think it's very interesting because you as remembering things. Maybe in a few years you will be like, wow, it was like this. It was like this, and I couldn't imagine it was like this.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm not a very photo girl.
Right.
I'm more passionate than the other part of this, which is street art and TNC guy. Something's written, right?
Oh, look at this. Got the. Can't read. It's in Thai.
Yeah. But it's the lion, the Chinese lions.
Yeah.
The dance of the lions.
Yeah. I didn't realize we had our masks on. How about that?
This is crazy.
Yeah.
Have you seen this?
Yeah, I actually have a friend who's written a book on this. His name is Joe Cummings, and he wrote about these types of tattoos. Those are religious in nature for sure, and cultural.
Yeah, definitely, yes. It's very impressive because you have all those things.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
I recognize some of these. This is locations.
Oh yeah? I think the colors of those photos are just amazing, and the contrast, it's very interesting, very artistic pictures, even if it's portraits.
For sure.
Sometimes portraits could be very annoying, I think, but those are, I love this.
Yeah. I like the black fingernail polish.
Yeah. Like this is something, I have a friend in Hong Kong doing these kind of photos with a superposition, what do you call it, put pictures on top of others and you have this reflection, and it's very, very interesting. So,
oh, here we go, look at this, you get an explanation. Fictitious person, I guess. This is genius right here. Look at this.
do you think something was underneath before?
I think this is part of this. I don't know.
Yeah, here it's written also in Thai. Talat Noi, a little bit of the market. Oh, this is great. Oh, so sorry. Oh, it looks like you. Yeah. You pose for him?
Right.
Really?
No.
Looks like it. No?
On a golf day, maybe.
You have your portrait on the wall.
Right.
That's perfect.
Some Chinese propaganda. I think this goes all the way to the river.
You see, this is the kind of the structure portraits or work or paintings that I like very much, because it's you have different layers of lecture. You can just see what you want, and you have different things.
This is beautiful right here.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's just insanity. Look, I bet you take a picture of this guy's name. You have my driver. Look, just you eat that. That's your noodle dish, right? It's just charcoal. This is genius.
Yeah. This is very Chinese.
It's like some propaganda, right? Like the Great Wealth.
It's written here.
Look at the bus stop, 420 meters. This must be you get a water taxi here. Hong Wong Kung Shrine. Oh, here it is right here. Check this out. So this is the guy, I guess, huh?
Yeah. That's amazing.
Oh, nice.
Ah, there's a boat here. Palapa boat. Look, it's a boat.
Fantastic.
Maybe it's a restaurant or something?
This reminds me of that one in, is it Hollywood? in Hong Kong? Halfway down?
Manmo Temple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Almost identical design to me.
Yeah. It's just
Frank, you been back
this
here?
is different.
Look at this awesome
You
tree.
pick up a boat here, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a pier.
Wow. I mean, I can't say I'm excited to see this, but it looks pretty awesome.
I'm very impressed with all those trees with all this ramification everywhere.
Yeah, the
It's
bed.
the same in Hong Kong with on the walls. You see it when it goes through the walls. Very amazing. Very impressive all the time.
I love the idea of office door open space.
Yes.
You know, just this is like Singapore when you go to Raffles. It's like, wow, I'm walking outside.
Have you seen this part of Red
it's
Part completely
insanity.
out of nowhere to the rest?
That was probably the original house or
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
Right.
The rest looks brand new.
And look at this, 8 trillion years old, right?
It's beautiful.
Well, good. I'm going to end it here. Thank you for coming down to the river with me to Talat Noi. We're in Bangkok, Chinatown, Yarwat Road. We went to Patina and we took a little walk to see the temple, and that's it. We still got mass. We're still in COVID time, so
Yeah.
we'll do a thank you.
Thank you to you.
All right, thank you everyone. Take care.
And
Thank
come
you.
here. It's beautiful.
1, 2, 3, quiet.